Welcome to the Health Rising podcast, where we empower you along your health journey. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Salmon, and together we'll explore the steps to greater health, hope, and happiness. Let's rise together. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Salmon. It's good to have you here. It's a good day here in Houston. Beautiful weather, as usual. And I'm excited to talk to you about some important concepts about health. On this podcast, we're trying to help you to become the healthiest version of yourself and help you to make some healthy changes and just love your life. That's health, in my opinion. So let's get into today's topic. I really want to just talk about okay, let's say your health isn't where you want it to be. So now what? What do we do? What's the next step? So first, let's talk about just kind of coming to that realization that health is not in the best place. Your health is not in the best place that you could be, and that can be really challenging to be in that position, especially in today's society. We have what many have considered a shame culture, where your actions determine who you are. And so when you have performed actions that have led to specific outcomes, health outcomes that are not desirable, a common one I think I see so frequently and so commonly is someone who is obese, right? There's a lot of shame involved with being in that position because you take on the title of fat. You are fat. And it's a very shame-driven culture that you and oftentimes when we are in that position, and I'm speaking as an individual who has been obese. I was fat, and I saw myself that way, right? That's who I was. And taking on that's what shame is, right? Where we have these actions that we've performed that have led to an undesirable outcome, and now that is who we are. We are the result of all of our actions. And that is a challenging place to be. Um, we call that cognitive dissonance, where your actions are not in line with what you ultimately want for your life. So when you come to that realization that your health has kind of gone off track, it's not really where you wanted to end up. Last episode we talked a lot about um, what health is and kind of what that place would look like, and you're not there. And in this situation, you kind of feel like you're in this pit, right? You're in that rut. Maybe not a huge rut, and sometimes that can be challenging because if you don't see any need to change, you're just gonna keep going with where you're at. But for many of us, we get to a point where we realize, wow, I'm kind of in a place where I really don't want to be. And that can be a heavy place to be. And oftentimes we say, well, eventually you'll hit rock bottom. I don't like that concept because anyone who's dealt with addiction knows that there are multiple rock bottoms. And you can hit a rock bottom and then find a new way to keep digging. So, really, the key to ending is to just stop digging. Just put away the shovel and just decide this isn't for me. But how do we kind of get to that point? You know, maybe we look at ourselves and we say, I don't like where I am with my health. I don't like, um, you know, being depressed. I don't like these negative thoughts that I'm plagued with, and I don't know if there's a way out. And oftentimes that's how we'll feel when we're in that situation. And when we feel that shame, we feel that distance between who we want to be and who we currently are, we can feel a lot of struggle. And it can be a challenging place to be because oftentimes those very emotions or that anxiety of kind of feeling that gap between where we want to be and where we are can lead us to the very actions that have gotten us to where we are. For example, if we look at ourselves in the mirror and we are overweight, we can look at ourselves and say, I'm so fat and I don't like where I'm at. And we feel this discouragement. And then how do we try and make ourselves feel better with some of the poor coping habits that we may have developed that led to our obesity? And we overeat. And you see this a lot portrayed in media or in movies, right, as an entertainment. But these are real challenges that people deal with, right? And so that's why it's an ironic little spiral downward. And we're trying to talk about, well, how do we, take this upward? How do we improve health and get better? But this very principle is kind of illustrating how it can be a downward spiral for many of us. And we can get kind of deeper and deeper into some of these bad habits. And it can be really challenging to turn around and to make the changes that we want to make in our lives. One of the things that can be extremely powerful is to recognize, to take accountability for our actions. Now, you may look at that as many of us do when we're in a pit and we look at that, we see the underbelly of accountability and we feel the shame of, I am fat because of my actions. And that's a heavy thing to take accountability for. It's a lot easier to say, no, my family's all fat, right? This is just the genes, this is just the way we are. Or, you know, I was just dealt this hand, oh, I had this incident or this scenario, and that is the reason that I'm struggling with these thinking patterns, or the reason that I'm dealing with this. And I don't, again, going back to our last episode, we talked about how there are these two alternate realities that coexist at the same time. So I'm not discrediting the effect that our genetics or our life experiences have on us. I'm simply recognizing that we have to take accountability that there are actions that we take that contribute to our current health status. And I want to get into this, even though it can sound a little uncomfortable to talk about, especially when we don't like where we're at. Because then we look at ourselves in shame and say, but then that means I'm a failure. And we feel that discomfort, and nobody likes to be there. Let me just stop for a moment, though, and tell you, if you are dealing with these thoughts that you are a failure, please stop. Just stop treating yourself that way. You are not a failure. You are human. And being a human, you deal with the challenges of living as a human. And everyone has their challenge and their trial that they are struggling with. And yours is no different. So please be kind to yourself. And let's sit in that discomfort for a moment together, because I want you to see that there is a light through that discomfort. Because as we think about it, if we say, let's talk about someone who is dealing with obesity. So if I have taken actions that have led to my weight challenges, then I have some responsibility in arriving to this point. And if my actions have contributed to me arriving to this point, then that means that my actions are an important component of the end result of where I am. So now let's think about that from a different perspective. If your actions have led to your specific health situation, that very thought can be a source of hope for you, because that very realization can help you recognize that your actions can also be the steps or the power needed to get out. And for many people, that may sound obvious. For me, it wasn't so obvious. I was ignoring this reality as I continued to gain weight and was dealing with some mental health challenges, but I'm not going to get into that too much. I think it's easier to just conceptualize the weight that I was dealing with, that I was obese. And so I was, struggling and continuing to eat. And this great epiphany came as I had a plate of food in front of me and I had one or two more bites left. I was done eating. I didn't want to eat anymore. But I thought to myself, I have to eat this. And we'll go back to my childhood for a second here. I'm not going to say that my childhood is the reason that I was obese, but there were some things that I was taught as a child that I think contributed to my eating patterns. And I was taught, you take what you'll eat and you eat what you take, which sounds like a great philosophy. We're not going to waste food. But if I just believe that forever, that I have to eat everything on my plate, then what's that going to do when I take too much food? Which I think everyone has done that, where you put too much food on your plate, right? You're really, really hungry and you think you're going to eat a ton, but then you realize, wow, I actually wasn't, I filled up quicker than I expected. And we're all, we can misjudge how much food we really need to eat. So that's where I was. I had this food on my plate and I thought I have to eat this. And then I thought, wait, I don't. I don't have to eat this. And that little epiphany was pretty profound for me because it helped me to begin this weight loss journey, ultimately leading to 65-pound weight loss. So it was simply the realization that I can take accountability, that my actions led me to where I was. My actions can lead me out of where I was. And it took practice, and I had to change those habits, which was challenging, and that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. But recognizing or taking that accountability is something that can be really empowering for us. So, accepting accountability is also the ability to accept that you have power to change who you are because you are responsible for who you have become. And so that can be a source of great hope for you. And I think let's start looking at it that way instead of the negative view that we so frequently view ourselves as, oh, I'm fat, right? I'm anxious. I'm depressed. All these negative labels that we throw at each other or throw at ourselves, particularly. Let's just be kinder to ourselves and say, no, I've taken some actions that have led to my weight gain and led me to a place in my health that has some results that I'm not happy with. And so then let that, that cognitive dissonance, that gap, of arriving from where you wanted to be to actually being where you currently are, and say, I'm going to make some changes and I'm going to get to a better place. So I'll talk more now about what I like to refer to as the health rising pathway. And you'll see it in my triangle logo, the symbol. There's significance to this symbol. It's a source of great strength for me, and I will go through each one of the component parts of it. But it starts in the bottom left corner of the little line that you have, which is just where we all start in life. And on that health rising pathway, right, it all starts with a desire. You just have a desire to change because you don't like where you are. You have that, that cognitive dissonance that gap between where you currently are and where you wanted to actually be. And you let that become a desire for you to try and begin a new journey, right? And just let that desire kind of sit within you. It can be a difficult thing when we're looking at maybe a lot of weight loss, or we feel like I've always been this way, right? I've always struggled with this. I have patients who I love helping them with things that they tell me have always been an issue for them. Because as they start recognizing the power of little habits and little changes that they can make, we can change how things have been for them, even if it's been that way for years and years and years. And that is part of the beauty of being human. We talked last episode about some of the challenges of being human, but I think one of the greatest parts of being human is that we can change our course at any given time. And that's what I want to talk a lot more about with you. So we have this desire to make things different. Now, we may not know where to start or where to go next, and that's fine. But just having that desire and letting that desire kind of grow within us can be a great source of encouragement, or it's just something that kind of gets us to start. Even just thinking about change can be one of the first important steps to starting on this journey to changing our health. So if you desire a change, you are on a pathway, and take courage, because desire is an important first step. Now, this let's talk just for a second about this journey, because you have kind of an unhealthy journey, right? An unhealthy journey that we may have started, but a lot of times our unhealthy journey is not due to us actively choosing this path. I live in America, and I've had the opportunity to live in multiple other countries. I've was born in Canada. I've lived in Argentina. I've lived in England, and I recognize that America, while I love America because it has some of the greatest things that any country can have, there are some challenges that we deal with in America. And specifically, I refer to the ease with which we can get fast food, sweets, candy. All of these things are so commonplace that I think the natural path for anyone in America is to become obese and diabetic and have a high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And that's just the natural course of everything that we're so easily surrounded by. And I think we need to stop shaming ourselves over this and simply just recognize you live in America, which is an amazing country, but recognize some of the challenges that we deal with in this country, and that your weight is something that we have to be actively engaged in making systems, making habits around us. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves obese. We'll find ourselves on a unhealthy pathway. And I think that this is just a result of our commercialized country, right, where we love to give you exactly what people want, and sometimes we don't always consider the end result of all of our actions, especially when we're busy with a lot of other things, right? And I think that that's contributed to a lot of our health challenges that we deal with in our country right now. So the pathway to the unhealthy place, so to speak, it's pretty quick path. It's easy to get to and doesn't require much effort, right? And it's just all around you. in this country. So if you find yourself in that place, take hope and recognize it was kind of the guaranteed path. So don't get discouraged. And let's find you the new path, right? This path, this healthy path, which requires some changes, but you can do it and we can get you there. And that's an important thing to know, that there is hope ahead for you. You have gotten here because of some choices, right? Or maybe that you just simply didn't choose and you just were going with the natural food choices available to you. And now you've arrived at a place and you don't like where you're at. So where do we go next? You have that desire in you. You desire to have a change. You have started the process of, I don't like where I'm at. I want to be somewhere else. At this point, you might be tempted to try and jump to, how do I get there? But the thing is, we just have a desire for a change. So we need to start thinking, okay, where do we want to go, right? And that's what we talked about last time. What does health? What does it look like? Where are we trying to end up? And that can look different for everyone, right? There's not one definition for health. And so having your defined reality of, okay, this is what I want. This is where I want to be with my health. And then you need to specifically identify, what are the changes? What are the things that would be different in your life? So, for example, let's say that you don't like feeling short of breath after going up the stairs, and you determine that this is because of some excess weight that you have over your chest wall. And so you want to try and lose some weight, right? We talk a lot about that. And so, in order to lose weight, you need to know what needs to change. What are the things that need to be different in order to accomplish that? And this is where many people struggle, because we have misunderstandings of what actually needs to happen to lose weight. And we think that, oh, I got to exercise more, or I just got to eat, stop eating at McDonald's or whatever. But in reality, what I found is there are multiple little things that all add up together and contribute to weight gain. I don't intend to go over all of those in this one episode. I hope to maybe address some of those in future episodes. But starting to recognize, okay, what are the things that I'm doing? What is contributing to my current situation, my current health status? And what would be change? What would we change? What would we do differently to get to this place that we want to be at, right? Whatever we're trying to change about our health. And so having a very clear picture of where we are trying to go, what's that end destination? That's critical. But then knowing, okay, what are the steps to getting there? And again, we don't need to know exactly what needs to change. And oftentimes we don't really know what it is. But as we allow this desire to work within us, we start thinking about our actions. We start thinking about our lives. We start thinking about what's happening. What are we doing that are contributing to this? Perhaps we're dealing with mental health challenges, right? We start recognizing, what are the things that trigger us? What are those things that set us off, that make us feel really anxious, that make us get depressed? What are those moments? What are those words that are said? Or what is going on in our mind? What are we telling ourselves in those moments? We don't need to judge ourselves at this time. We don't need to shame ourselves for where we are, or maybe some of the choices that we're making. But as we start gaining an awareness and this desire to change grows within us, then we can start to begin to identify areas for further improvement. Where do we go from here? Now, one of the challenges of making a podcast useful for individuals, I could make a podcast that's just really entertaining to listen to. Well, maybe I can't. I'm not super entertaining to listen to. But I don't really have interest in that. What I really have interest in is helping you to start changing your life, to start improving your health. And guess what? I can't do that. I can give you tools. I can help you identify some of the keys that would help get you to where you want to be. But ultimately, it's in your hands. It's in you. And you have that power within you. Tap into it. Start recognizing it. Wake up and see yourself for who you can really become. And as you do that, you will grow into a new human. It's an incredible thing to experience. It's an incredible thing to witness as a physician. And that's where I want to go with this. So, in order for you to make those changes, I don't want you to just listen to this podcast for entertainment purposes. It won't be useful and you won't gain anything from it. That is not my intent in creating this podcast. Entertainment is great. I am not opposed to entertainment, but I'm more interested in really helping people to change their lives, to see improved health. And in order for that to occur, these are some concepts that need to be internalized and acted upon. So let's get to some of the homework that I want you to perform, or the actions that I want you to engage with. And that is, I want you to start getting curious. Be curious about what is going on in your health journey and what has caused you to get to the point that you're at. And especially with things that you have that cognitive dissonance, that gap that you wish things were different, try and find what has caused you to get to this point. What are those actions and why do you engage in those actions? Right? For example, why do you snack late at night? That's a common one that I dealt with. Why do you snack in between meals? Why, what is, you don't need to shame yourself. You don't need to, we're not talking about that. And we don't even need to worry about changing anything. Just get curious. Find out what's going on, what actions are contributing to your health, and have that desire grow to the point that you start paying attention to the choices that you're making. Some of those choices that maybe are just unconscious choices, and let those become the source of what we begin to work on in this health rising pathway, in this journey together. Where do we go next? And that's what I want to talk about on our next episode. So thanks for joining me. I hope that this is useful to you and that you are seeing the beginnings of a new, healthier you. That's my ultimate goal with this podcast, what I really want to accomplish. And I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments, concerns. You can send them to my email, Jordan at healthrisingdpc, stands for direct primary care, and that's at healthrisingdpc.com. So send me your questions or concerns, and until next time, bye. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Health Rising podcast. I practice as a direct primary care physician in the Houston, Texas area. You can read about my blog and learn more about direct primary care at healthrisingdpc.com. If you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share, feel free to message me on X or on Instagram at healthrisingdpc. Until next time, remember to choose health and be kind to yourself. This podcast serves solely for educational purposes. The information provided here is not intended to be medical advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship between the host, guest, or anyone associated with the podcast and the listener. For personalized medical advice tailored to your specific health concerns, please consult your own family physician. Any interactions with patients or experiences shared in this podcast have been altered to ensure confidentiality and comply with HIPAA regulations. Names, genders, diagnoses, and any potentially identifiable information have been modified to protect the privacy of individuals. By continuing to listen to the Health Rising podcast, you acknowledge and agree to these terms.